this in later. Cool, we're good there. And then we can move that and move that. So at this point, we've got our setup where when we hit run, you should have a platform, you should have a floating ghosty. We haven't done anything with key presses or movement or falling yet. That's our goal. The big thing that I would like to point out to you is that obviously we're down here in our, not the update screen, but our game loop. Essentially what we've got going on is that we are basically every time we hit this while loop, and this will continue running, it's running at 60 frames a second, so it'll loop 60 times a second, and every single time it loops, it's going to go ahead and it's going to get those keys pressed of whatever's getting pressed down, and then this section we're just checking for whatever events have happened. Keyboard, mouse, talking, are you moving the mouse around, stuff like that. And then this is us storing stuff for the future to move in. And that's kind of what we're going to play with today. Mr. Banker's really, really big problem this last block, I forgot to globalize this. That wasted about 8 minutes of our day. That made me feel really, really dumb. And we didn't find that out until after class was done. So we're going to not make that mistake. So we're already globalized up here. We've already got new player X and new player Y. What we're going to figure out today, again, this is going to be the thing that we're going to use to store our last information. And then we're going to go ahead down here and we're going to add to our call game functions today. There's only 2 functions that we're going to put in. We're going to put in a keys pressed, so we can move left and right, and then even jump. But then we're also going to go ahead and put in a check collisions. And so what that's going to happen is it's going to allow us so that when the ghost actually falls, it'll stop falling when it actually hits the rectangles or the platforms. And then when it moves left and right, it'll also stop. Okay, so that's kind of our goal for today. So what we're going to do is in this call game functions, in the main loop, we're down by the update screen. The order of these calls drastically matters. I always want the update screen to be the last call. I would always like to check, and I'm going to hashtag this one out. I want to do key presses first, and then I want to do can you move? And then the third thing is if you can move, then I want to actually update the screen. Okay, so the order of these checks do matter. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take care of this key press one. Okay, so I'm going to write over this with check key press, and this is going to be the only function that takes in a parameter. So we're going to pass in a value that is keys pressed. And remember, that's the variable or the list that we're creating is holding all of the keys in it. And we've already got that globalized, so I can't make my global mistake again. Okay? Well, obviously, if we're going to call this, we need to go up into the functions area and actually define it. So we're going to go with a nice little def, check, key press. And then we got to pass in our list, which is keys pressed. And then from there, our check keys pressed, we're going to throw in 3 globals because there are going to be 3 things that we actually change here. New player X, new player Y, and lowercase y, and then player speed. And player speed will come into play later. That's going to deal with jumping. So we're going to do a right, a left, and then this will be a jump. Okay? So for righty, all we're going to do is a nice little if, keys pressed, and then we'll open pygame.k_, and instead of using arrow keys today, we're going to use WSAD. Okay, so I'm putting the lowercase a is now my my A is my left. I went backwards. And this is right. You can change the A to a D if you want. But this is going to be my right-hand key. And if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say new player X is going to be plus equals 3. And we're going to do the exact same thing if keys pressed. And then we get pygame.k_d. Oh, I like this one's a negative if we're going left. I'm sorry. Left is neg. And so if we hit D, we are moving right. That's going to be new player X plus equals 3. Now, to be right is positive. Okay? And then the only thing I'm going to do out here is I'm going to print new player X. Because I know we haven't really done a bunch with it yet, but at this point you should be able to hit run. And when you click on the screen, you're not necessarily going to see the movement yet, I don't believe. But you will, however, see the print statement. If I keep hitting left and right, you notice that it doesn't do 350 anymore. We keep dropping to 347 and then 353. So if you can see in the console that it doesn't just constantly go with 350, but if you hold the button, it'll change to 347 and 353, it means this is working. Now all we got to do is set up another function that is going to be def check movement. Okay? Or check collisions, sorry. Collisions. And so within this function, now we'll set up those new X or new player X boxes to actually allow that ghost to move back and forth. But if you have those print statements actually changing, we're in a good place because it's at least registering. So did anybody not get those numbers showing up in the console where they were changing? All right, so you guys good? Ooh, one quick thing. This is also fun. I don't know if you guys know this yet. Right now, because I wrote the def check collisions, if I hit run, it's going to give me a giant error because I made a function that's not doing anything inside. Guess how I can get rid of this error? Pass! And now it won't give me an error anymore because it just automatically says, hey, this is fake code. So the word pass is just putting in fake code so that you can get out of an error if you ever need to. There's other tricks you can use, but anyways. So inside this check collisions, we are going to have a large amount of global variables, and I'm sorry for that. I really don't want to use global variables. You shouldn't be using them, but our project isn't big enough to really specify between the global and the local. But yeah, this would have a boatload of parameters or a boatload of globals. So we're going to start off with player speed, and then we're going to add to this one. So this will be kind of fun. So what we're going to do in here, this is going to be vertical movement. There we go. So that's our vertical movement. That's going to figure out like us moving left and right. And then this is going to be our horizontal, which is going to be us moving right and left. And again, if I could spell, you'd trust my coding a little bit more. So let's do that. Okay. So within the vertical movement, basically what we're going to do is we are going to set a couple of quick variables. Okay, we're going to set a variable for player speed and new player Y, and we're going to actually add to them. We're then going to make a new player rectangle, which is going to be a possible future move location. And then what we're going to do is we're going to check that new rectangle and see if it hits anything. If it doesn't hit anything, we'll actually use that new rectangle as the real rectangle. If we do hit something, we're just going to throw away all of our work and go back to what the last stored value of X and Y were from down here. Okay, does that kind of make sense? So we're making a rectangle, a fake one, to check to see if it hits stuff. So within our vertical, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a nice little player speed plus equals player Excel. So what this does is this causes a falling movement. Basically, your player speed starts at 0. Our player acceleration was 0.4. So every time we run through this, and again, it was 60 times a second, we go from 0 to 0.4 to 0.8 to 1.2 to 1.6 to 2 to 2.4 to 2.8. And we keep increasing how fast that speed is moving. So this isn't just going to be a linear drop. This will be an accelerating drop. Yay, gravity. We've now got that value stored, but we need to move where the rectangle is going to be drawn. So that's going to end up being a new player y. And that's going to be plus equals player speed. And so we automatically need to globalize new player y. Next thing we need to do is we're going to draw potential next rectangle. So we're going to draw the new rectangle, and we're going to see is it hitting anything. So first we just got to get it on the screen. New player rect equals pygame dot capital R rect, and then back into player x, new player y, and then sprite WH, sprite WH. So that's our new player rectangle. And then these next two things are going to be kind of neat. They're going to be Boolean flags that kind of help us out with some stuff. So this next one is just automatically a Y collision. And so what we're going to do is we're drawing this rectangle. Before we check anything, we want to say Y collisions are false. So we are declaring you haven't hit anything. So we're resetting this to false every time we loop, so that we always start with the you haven't hit anything yet. Okay? So then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to also, and this one will help us with jumps later, player on ground. And this is also false. So now here's the thing. You should remember from yesterday, we already established new player ground out in the global area. Y collision? Do you think we're going to change that and communicate that elsewhere throughout the program? Yes. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to globalize both of those things. So I've got a new player Y. I'm going to also have Y collision. I'm going to put player on ground kind of towards the front. Player on ground. And that's because I'm going to try to keep all of my X globals and all of my Y globals together, because it's going to make it easier for me to debug in a little bit. But I've got player speed, player on ground, new player Y, Y collision. And all of this is still leading up to check for collisions. You can see why we couldn't do this in 5 minutes yesterday. So then from there, all we need to do is actually check collisions. And so that's a for P in platforms. All we're doing is if P dot collide rect open new player rect, we're going to set X collision, Y collision equals true. And so this says we hit something. And then the third thing we're going to do, player speed is going to be equal to 0. So it basically means stop falling. And then we're going to also have player on ground equals true. And this allows jumping. And then we're going to break. The reason we're breaking is if I hit one platform, do I have to continue checking other platforms? No, you already have one of them. Why keep checking? And so the only thing we've got here is if we go through all of these checks and we never actually collide, I want to go ahead and use my new locations. So this would end up being our very last part if you can move without hitting, do it. And so all we're doing here is that if Y underscore collision equal false, player Y equals new player Y. And then I've got to make sure I've globalized everything that's to the left of a equal sign here. So I've got player speed. I've got new player Y. I've got Y collision. I've got player on ground. I've got Y collision. I've got player speed. I've got player on ground, and I've got player Y. Ooh, I haven't globalized player Y yet. I should probably do that. Player Y. So we've got 3 Y variables that are globalized. Player Y, new player Y, and Y collision. And that's what I watched last Y. It's not pretty. So at this point, I believe if you end up giving this thing a nice little run, especially since we've called check key press down here, I think you get a ghost that falls. I hope. What didn't I globalize? Come on now. Player speed, player speed, new player Y. I'm just gonna globalize this new player rect. I don't even new player rect. Is anybody getting fallen? Each class, not base player X, new player Y. These have all of our global variables. Does this ever stuff? New player X, new player Y. Let's go up top here, and we're just gonna say a new player X and new player Y. So new player X, we're just gonna set to, I don't know, 350. And new player Y will set to 20. We may come back and overwrite these, but I wonder if we needed to make a global thing before they actually started up. Come on, fall, man. That's what we're missing. I need to draw that thing, right? Type this on screen. Why would I do it?
Where is check collisions called?
Check collisions is called down in. God!
That
You're so smart. Thank you. So first off, again, order of this matters. You're my hero right now. First off, we want to check, did the keys get pressed? Secondly, we want to check after we press it and we try to move, are you allowed to move? So I need to have my function, again, check collisions. I need that called after the key press. And then the third thing will be update screen. And hopefully, there you go, we get to go see the false. And then obviously at this point, when you press left and right, you're seeing that we've got this 347 and 353. So you know it wants to move. We just haven't put in the checking for, is the new box getting made? So at this point, if your ghost can fall, we're in a good spot. If not, now would be a great debug time, especially knowing that I screwed up all this stuff too. Localized player. You guys good? Jason, I'll usually figure it out. Usually good. Line. You got the line in that. Should come on. Chase will get you caught up. All right, so at this point we're falling. The only other thing we've got now is let's figure out how to actually move left and right. We've done that with the key presses, but we need a similar thing of this to actually make our new player X and new player, or the new player Y location. So that's kind of what we're going to get into next. So within our horizontal movement of the check collisions, so we're still in the same big function here. Our horizontal movement is again going to be a new player rect equals pygame.capital R rect. And this time we're doing a new player X, comma, player Y. So we already trust our player Y. We just want to see the X variant here. And then this is going to be sprite WH, comma, sprite WH. So again, we're making a new rectangle that is the size of our sprite, but at the new X location. We're then also going to set our X collision to false. And the fact that we just made that means you know for a fact we're going to go up top and globalize that and say X collision. And I'm even going to go above and beyond that one. We already had a Y collision, a player Y, and a new player Y. So while I'm up here, I'm just going to go ahead and say, since we did an X collision, I'm going to just already do the player X and then the new player X. So I've got 3 for X, and I've got 3 for Y, and then I've got the player speed and player on ground. So we've said this with the horizontal. We're making a new rectangle. We're setting our collision to false. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check, did you hit something? Check against all platforms. So this is the exact same thing as this for P in platforms if P collide with rectangle. It's the exact same 2 lines. We're going to do something different if we hit. So for P in platforms, if P dot collide rect, new player rect. So if we hit something, we're now going to set our X collision to true. And then honestly, we're just going to break. Because if we hit 1, we don't need to change anything else. And I don't need to change my speed or my acceleration, because if I'm moving sideways, it's going to default stop me because it doesn't let me move into the next setup. And so once we checked all those, this is just going to be, if you don't hit, move. And so if X collision equals false, player X is going to be equal to new player X. And so if you hit a run at this point, I think you get falling. And I also think your A and D key, once you click on the screen, will move your go side to side. You can't jump yet. Oh no! That's not good.
You spelled collision wrong.
Which line?
118.
There you go. Thank you. Collision's a very hard word to spell for me. It's like vacuum. Are there 1 C? Is there 2 C's? Is there 1 U? Is there 2 U's? Mr. Ranker's not good at spelling, by the way. All right, so we got to go see the moves left and right and sticks inside that little trough. If you've got that, you're in a good place. Otherwise, ask for help. All right, so next thing we're gonna do you guys want to do a jumping or facing the correct direction first?
Jumping.
Jumping, all right, let's get some jumping, then we'll pretty it up. So for the jumping, all we're gonna do is go back to our keys press. So check key press function. We've got one last area here. In this jump one, we're gonna do it if keys pressed pygame.k_w, and then we're going to do it and. What was our variable? Is it touching ground, on ground? Player on ground. And that's by default going to be set to true or false. It's just a Boolean flag. You don't even have to compare it because it's only a true or false thing. So this is just a reading if the key is pressed and true or false. That's all it's reading. But if the player's on the ground, then we're allowed to jump. And all we're going to do here is we're going to say player speed equals -8. And it basically takes our speed and completely stops it, I believe. Okay? Actually, negate it so we can go. And then again, we'll start adding by 0.04 or 0.4 every single time we loop through. So we'll go to -8, -7.6, -7.2, blah, blah, blah. So at this point, we've already globalized player speed. So if we go down into run and give it a little up arrow, you should be able to jump. Jumpy. And now you can die. So we need a reset feature, because that'd be kind of nice. So we're going to go down into our collision check again. I'll give you guys a second to catch up, but we've only got like 2 more lines of code in here for our fall death. And then all we got to do is switch up the lefty and righty, and then you guys finish up early, where my other class, oh man, they probably won't be try. I was, yeah, third period was my best today. So let's try this out. This is our fall death. And then reset. So if player Y becomes greater than the height, so if we get to, if we fall more than the actual screen itself, fall more than the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say player Y equals player Y start, and then we'll go with player X equals player X start. So we need to go make these 2 variables up top, and what these are going to be are reset variables that can get stored there for when we fall off the screen. We've already globalized player X and player Y, so that shouldn't be an issue. So I'll give you guys a second to copy this, but we're just going to go up to player Y, up to the variables, player Y start and player X start. I put them the exact same as where we started with the X and Y ghost initially at that 350 or 350. So we'll go all the way up to the top again, where your variables are. This will be test a new player. Again, player X start equals player Y start equals, and we're just going to set them to what they were before, 350 and 200, or 350 and 20. And I think at that point, you should be able to jump off the screen, assuming I globalized all my stuff properly. And everything's communicating. No break. Oh, yes. Kids, I don't look dumb in front of you guys. Well, I mean, that's obviously an opinion. But, yeah. So is everybody good at this point? Does anybody have anything they need help catching up on? Anything you need to see? Because we've only got 2 quick if statements, 1 Boolean flag, and now we can flip our thing back and forth. You were missing a global variable somewhere.
I would imagine from that being game mode. Check it out. We'll get this in and find it, and if not, tomorrow was, our some talking screenshots things.
So last thing that we've got in this, is gonna end up being, oh, inside your while loop, are you doing? Did you have this Y collision set to false when you're doing the draw potential next rectangle? So you're in that global, player speed, new player. You have the new player Rex, do you have that Y collision player background?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll figure it out. All right, so last thing is just pressing left and right. We've got, we're gonna go back on that if statement. Okay, so we're gonna go down to our main loop. And we're gonna go into this key down section. So our key down section, we're gonna do if event.key equal pygame dot k underscore d. And then the next, I'm gonna leave that, actually, I won't leave that. I'm gonna say sprite right equals true. And then we'll do it if event.key equal pygame.k underscore a. Sprite left sprite right equals false. So all we're going to do is use this variable of sprite right in here to communicate which picture we would like to blit. So if we're going to use this variable to communicate outside of the program, what do we need to do to this variable? Globalize it. So we'll do a sprite right. And then the only other thing I'm doing is we'll go up to the place where we're, well, I do need to actually put a sprite right equals true up here. So sprite right equals true. So you need to initialize it just so that we can actually communicate with it. But then now all I'm doing is I'm going to my update screen function. And I'm going to do a if sprite right. So if sprite right is true, I'm showing the right image. Else, and I'm just going to blit this exact same thing, Control C, Control V, and I'm just going to change this R to an L, and that's it. So once you get your keys, legitimately the rest of this is just getting that if-else statement taken care of, and I believe at this point you guys have I know it's not a game, but you at least have the basics of here's how you make a platformer. And then you could take the bullet shooting that we learned the other day. Oh, yes, take the bullet shooting that we learned the other day. You could obviously throw in a health system and stuff like we figured out within the PyTurtle. It's the exact same thing. All you gotta do is figure out how to blip the score of the screen. You did that with the pack shooter. You could actually have different levels. Hey, load this screen if you're on list 1, this screen is list 2, this screen is like the item in list 3 kind of thing. So like you can go crazy with these at this point. I've seen full out like Super Mario level remakes that are basically just Pygame stuff. But like you can actually do some really, really, really cool stuff. I am going to stop recording just because I think that was actually a good recording.